hearing is now resumed.
Much obliged.
Mr. Ganraj, you're still under your oath.
Mr. Ganraj, when we stopped off, we were talking about whether the commissioners were able to resume the process which you had described earlier on in your testimony on the 5th of March. Were you able to do so?
No, we were not able to do so as there was not enough commissioners present to conduct the process.
And are you able to say whether the process had been resumed at the level of the RO's office?
No, the process was not resumed at the level of the RO's office either.
Did you have a conversation with the CEO and the chairman upon your return to the building about a bomb in the building?
Yes, sometime during the course of that morning, the Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, informed myself and the chairman, I believe there were other commissioners present at the same time, that he received information of a bomb threat to the building.
Now, I want to ask you before we press on, the chairman was also based at the same, the chairman was also based at the same area in which you say the commissioners were?
Yes, she was.
And at that point when you were told of the bomb threat, could you very briefly tell us who you observed as being in the building?
There were several people in the building, starting from the chairman, several other commissioners. There was the head of the OAS delegation to OAS observer mission, electoral observer mission. There was the head of the Commonwealth observer mission, both of these persons being former heads of government of CARICOM countries, Mr. Bruce Goling and Mr. Owen Arthur. If I am not mistaken, there might have been representatives in the form of ambassadors and or high commissioners of several of the diplomatic missions in Guyana present in the building.
And can you recall whether they left or they stayed?
They did not leave, they remained, they stayed put.
Okay. Are you familiar with the name Karen Cummings?
I am.
And who is Miss Cummings?
Miss Cummings at that time was the Minister of Foreign Affairs under the PNU AFC government, and she was also a candidate at those elections.
After having been told of this bomb threat, did you see Miss Cummings?
I saw Miss Cummings coming into the building, that is to say the Ashman's building.
Mm-hmm.
She proceeded to the second floor of the building.
That's where you were?
Yes.
And where did she go?
She was ushered into a room on that second floor by Roxanne Myers, the Deputy Chief Elections Officer.
And that room into which she was ushered was how far away from you?
A few feet, and in clear view.
Okay. As a commissioner, can you tell me whether the commission had agreed to allow political party agents to hold meetings in that building during that period of time?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Gunraj, I'd like to take you back to this intimation by the CEO that he had received a bomb threat.
Yes, sir.
That's your statement.
He indicated to myself, the chairman, and the other commissioners present that he had received
A threat.
a threat. At that point, it was not apparent whether he received the threat personally or he received information.
No, Mr. Conrad, please, can you look at paragraph 27? I am dealing with your language in your signed statement.
I'm guided, sir.
You see the words
That
he had received. Is that incorrect?
In fact, sir, that is what he had said to us. I received a threat that there was a bomb in the building.
Okay. Now, this was communicated at least to you and the chairman.
Yes.
Was any decision taken in response?
Well, nobody moved, sir. Nobody left the building.
No. Here is an officer of the commission reporting to the chairman a very serious matter. I have received a threat that there is a bomb in the building. What did the chairman do? Say? He decided not to leave.
Yes.
Did you get the impression that that report was not being taken seriously by the chairperson?
Yes, sir.
Yes, she did not take it seriously.
The chairman,
Yeah.
and like everyone else there, including myself, nobody budged when that...
No, my concern is a little different.
The,
Did you get the impression that that intimation was not treated seriously by the chairperson? Putting it another way, she doubted that there was any bomb in the building.
your words, not mine, sir, but yes.
Thank you.
What was your attitude to it, hearing this from the CEO?
I ignored it. Personally, I ignored it. And my comment was that, well, this is serious. What we are doing here was serious, and if there was a bomb, then let it go. We have work to do.
Can I ask you, as a commissioner at GCOM, was it ever reported to the commission that a bomb was found in the building?
No, sir.
GCOM has never had such a report.
No, sir.
Or any device?
Or any device.
I want to ask you specifically, jumping ahead a little bit and then we come back. On the 6th of March, did you receive any information about any device being found at Ashman's building? That's a day after.
I don't recall.
Did you, well, do you recall being advised at any time of any device being found at Ashman's building?
No, ma'am.
Now, so you said that the IT department was also on the 2nd floor. Did you observe whether the IT department evacuated at some point?
I don't recall.
Okay. Now you said you saw, so we were going back to the discussion about Ms. Cummings. You said you saw the deputy CEO ushering Ms. Cummings into a room. And did you, were you able to see whether anyone else was in that room?
I saw several observers in the room, and I also saw a few observers following her into the room.
After this, did you go outside and you spoke to the media?
I did.
And while you were talking to them, did you observe anything?
I did.
Tell us.
While addressing the media, I saw a vehicle assigned to the CEO leaving the Ashman's building parking lot, and that vehicle was followed by a vehicle that normally escorted the vehicle of the Chief Elections Officer.
Good. Now, were you at Ashman's building later that day when the returning officer attempted to make a declaration of the results?
I was, ma'am.
Were you able to hear what he said?
He was barely audible, but he did communicate an intention to make a declaration.
All right. Now, at
To whom was that intention communicated?
That intention was communicated in the tabulation room to the persons gathered there, which included party representatives, markedly so a plethora of government ministers, then government ministers under the AP and UAFC government, observers, and I was there as commissioner.
What did you hear him, what, if anything, did you hear him see?
While I can't quote him and recall the words directly, he did say that he will communicate that I will proceed to, I will proceed to make a declaration.
But no declaration was in fact made.
No, he was prevented from so doing.
But at the point when you heard this expression of intention from the RO, did you object? Did you protest?
I did, sir. In fact, I did so very vehemently, and I followed him. I followed him out of what was his office, the tabulation room, the RO's office, out of that room, out of the crowd that of persons that was gathered. When I say crowd, the persons that were gathered there, and I followed him up the non-working escalators onto the second floor, all the time impressing upon him the need to complete the statutory process of tabulation before he was able to make that declaration that he attempted to make moments before. I was prevented from going further by Roxanne Myers.
What do you mean prevented from going further?
I followed Mr. Mingo up the stairs onto the second floor.
Yes.
And I was prevented from proceeding beyond a certain point by Roxanne Myers.
Well, there are several ways I imagine she could have done that. She could have laid down on the ground.
She stood in front of me.
Yes. And did she say anything to you?
I can't recall what she said to me.
In other words, she blocked you.
She blocked me, yes.
And there was no way of walking around her.
What?
It's alright. I'm not sure that this serves any purpose.
it's a meeting.
I'm sure there was, Commissioner.
It was clear to you that she did not want you to go further.
Yes.
Did it appear to you? Anyway, I would pursue that. I would pursue that. But just tell us. I asked if you protested when you heard the RO say that he was going to make a declaration. Can you tell us why? What was the reason for your protest and objection?
At the time that the RO Mingo stated that intention to proceed with the declaration, the precursor processes had not concluded. That is to say, the tabulation by way of comparison, statement of poll to statement of poll for each of the 879 polling stations in District 4 was not concluded.
At that point in time, do you recall how many stations were outstanding?
While I can't give a specific number, sir, I know it was a significant number that was not concluded.
Thank you.
Now you told us that after Mr. Mingo made his indication in the tabulation room, you followed him up to another floor and you were saying things to him. But did he turn back and respond to you as a GCOM commissioner?
No, he did not respond to me. He did not say anything. He was very stoic in his, in fact, he was beating a hasty retreat away from me.
Were you threatening Mr. Mingo?
Absolutely not.
Did you see him make, or did you hear him make a declaration? Mr. Mingo, did you hear him make a
At that
declaration?
time or subsequently later?
Okay, so he leaves the tabulation room and he goes upstairs. Does he follow through with his stated purpose? Does he then go on and make a declaration?
He did not proceed directly to doing something else. However,
Did he later that day make a declaration? If you don't know, say so.
well, he stood, so at some point later in that day, he stood on a balcony between the second and third floor and appeared to utter some words. If that is considered a declaration.
No, that can't be considered declaration. It's either you heard him make a declaration or you
What?
did not hear him make a declaration.
Chair, what he uttered was inaudible.
Okay, so you don't know when he made
Correct.
a declaration.
Right. So after you saw that, did you speak with the chairman of the commission?
After I was blocked from going further by Rox and Myers, I immediately went to the chairman and requested that an urgent meeting of the commission be called to discuss what had just happened.
Did such a meeting take place?
It did.
And tell us briefly what occurred during that meeting.
At that meeting of the entire commission, that is to say, chairman and 6 commissioners, the issue of the attempt to make that declaration by Mingo was raised. In our presence,
Yes.
the chairman called the chief elections officer, Keith Lowenfield, had him on speaker so that every one of us commissioners in the room could hear him, and he indicated to her, because the first question that she asked him was, "Where are you?" He said that he was at his office in Kingston and that he was going to return to the Ashmans building shortly and that the tabulation exercise would resume.
Mr. Gunraj, you said there was this meeting of the commission, and then you said the chairman called for the CEO. What I'm interested in finding out is, was there a decision of GCOM that what Mr. Mingo had done or purported to do was wrong because the tabulation exercise had not been completed. Did you as a body pronounce on that? If you recall, you might not recall.
They call commissioner, told the CEO, was a part of the meeting that we were having.
But one moment, I think I'm just trying to ascertain. Prior to calling the CEO, had the commissioners pronounced on the veracity of what was taking place? And you all as a group said,
So, are you following? I think what the commissioners are asking you is this. You have heard the RO state an intention to make a declaration. You also know that the tabulation process in the RO's office was not completed. This is brought to the attention of the commissioners who are in caucus on the second floor. What was the position of the commissioners to that state of affairs at that point?
The commission agreed that the tabulation process must be concluded before any declaration could be made.
and would you say that as a consequence, the chair summoned Mr.
Lowenfield. Yes, sir.
All right.
And could you then say further that it was because of the position taken by the commission that the tabulation process should be concluded before any declaration of the results of Region 4, that the CEO undertook to have the verification process resumed?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm keenly interested in this aspect. In fact, I think it's one of the most important aspects of this inquiry. This decision that you say that the Commission, GCOM met in caucus as it's put by Mr. Was there a discussion? Was it unanimous? Or was it just a majority that said what has happened is wrong and must be corrected? If you don't recall, that is fine.
No,
But-
I will say, sir, it was unanimous.
So
Because-
both sides.
Yes, everyone in the commission understood and agreed on that the procedure up to that point was not completed or not complied with. And as a consequence, there was a necessity for a continuation to completion of the tabulation process.
But there was no minute of that, as far as...
Sadly, again, I don't think there was.
While that meeting was going on, did you receive some information?
I did.
What information did you receive?
Someone came to the door of the room in which we were having the meeting and informed us that the returning officer, Claremont Mingo, was once again attempting to make a declaration.
Did you remain in that room?
No, I did not.
Well, did you, during the course of that meeting, did the chairman or any other commissioner ask the CEO to communicate with the returning officer to the effect that the verification process has to be completed before any declaration was made?
No.
So having received the information, sorry. I have to ask you this question. You all are the commissioners of GCOM. Why is no one taking a record of what's happening?
The reality is that our formal meetings are minuted. In fact, most of those meetings are actually recorded. There's a voice recording of it to provide a verbatim record. The presence of most or all of the members of the commission in one location during the dynamic elections process was to ensure that in the event that there were any issues that arose that required a commission decision or a discussion or determination by the commission, that it could be had. As to why there was no formal note-taking or records or minutes of those meetings, I would not be able to answer. But in the past, most if not all of those meetings were more or less informal, just for the purposes of getting the process moving the process forward.
I see.
So this particular meeting was an impromptu meeting,
It was, like the rest of the meeting.
which emerged based on the circumstances
Yes, sir.
unfolding.
Yes, sir.
So I don't usually repeat myself, but I'm so intrigued by this point that I must. You're saying that on the commission there was not a single dissenting voice that attempted to say, no, the RO could proceed to make the declaration?
Absolutely none, sir. Everyone was of the firm understanding that the RO could not and ought not to proceed in a manner that he was attempting to do.
One more.
So let's get back to you are there in the room while you all are having the meeting, somebody gives you information, do you leave that room and go anywhere?
I left the room. I proceeded out of the room, and as I proceeded out of the room, I could hear the loud protests of almost everyone gathered there.
Did
And-
you see the arrow?
Right, and as I looked, I saw the arrow in the position that I just described, on a platform between the second and third floors of the Ashman's building.
And well, you have told us that you couldn't hear what
What he
was
was
being
saying.
said. Was he by himself or was there any other GCOM staff with him?
There were two females who were standing with him, staffers of GCOM, whose name I really can't recall.
Sure. And at that point, did you see the DCO?
I don't recall if I saw her.
At that point, did you observe whether there were police officers in the building? Police ranks, I beg your pardon.
There was a very, very, very heavy police presence.
Had you made that observation before you went into the room for your meeting?
Earlier in the day, there was a police presence, but not that plethora of police officers that I observed after or during and after that attempt by the returning officer Mingo.
So after you saw Mr. Mingo, the returning officer, on the balcony, did you see him go anywhere?
I saw him retreat to the third floor.
Mr. Conrad, let me take you back a bit to this second, what appears to have been a second declaration. You said that you were in the room and certain matters were being discussed by commissioners, including the chairperson.
Yes, sir.
And someone came to the door of that room and indicated that the RO is about to make a second declaration.
Yes, sir.
You heard that.
Yes, sir.
Was there anything to prevent the chairperson from hearing that?
No, sir.
So, of all the persons present, were you the only commissioner who went out to see what was happening?
I was the first commissioner to leave the room. I was followed by the rest of the commissioners, including the chairman.
Okay. And you were able to get to Mr. Returning Officer?
No, sir. He was
On the
on a
balcony?
half of a level above me.
Yes. And you were prepared. Did you want to go up to him?
Sir, in the heat of the moment, my first and primary concern was, first of all, to try to ascertain what he was doing there.
Yes.
And it was more of observation first before acting. And immediately after, and this was all happening very quickly, of course, immediately after observing what he did or what he was doing, my next step, immediately thereafter, I looked around to try to locate the chairman. And I tried to locate the chairman. And I found her. I found her not very far away from where I was, and I approached her.
You were alarmed at what you
Of course.
felt had happened.
Of course.
So did you have an exchange with her?
I did have an exchange with the chairman, but it's opposite for me to mention, please, sir, that a conversation between myself and the chairman or another commissioner and the chairman is more or less useless without the entire quorate commission. I could have indicated to her what my observation was, my concern for what was happening, but it would be useless without the commission.
No, I understand it, but what did you indicate to her?
I indicated to her, look, did you just see what happened or what they was attempting?
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we were discussing a moment ago in the commission meeting.
But much more. You had an undertaking by the CEO that he's coming back and the process will resume.
Exactly, sir.
So that intention by the CEO was stultified by the second declaration. Would that be correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Immediately, if I may proceed,
No,
immediately,
when you said to the chairperson, you see what has happened. There's been a second declaration. Did she make any response?
she responded, and by this time, we were closer to the entrance to the stairs leading to where Mingo just did that, and leading to where he had retreated.
Yes.
Of course, there was a very heavy police presence preventing access to that stairway.
To the chairperson as well?
No, to the stairway where Mingo was.
Yes.
I engaged with the chairperson not very far from the foot of that staircase. And the chairman indicated to me that she was going to proceed up those stairs to where Mingo was to inquire what was happening.
Thank you. Now, in fact, from what you are describing to us, the returning officer was now proceeding to the area which you say housed the CEO and the secretariat and his secretariat.
Correct?
And that was an area to which commissioners needed a pass to get into.
Correct.
Do you know whether Mingo had received a pass? The returning officer had a pass and commissioners did not?
I saw Mingo up there on more than one occasions.
No, answer my question, please. Do you know whether he had a pass to access to the third floor?
I don't know whether he had a pass, but I saw him up there on more than one occasion.
So, from what you have told us, your read of the situation, sorry.
So, unless it's going to cause any inconvenience to you, we are suggesting that we continue until noon and then we resume at 1:30.
That would be perfect. Yes. So you saw the returning officer going up to this, what I will call the restricted area.
Yes, ma'am.
And after you and the chairman spoke, she followed him up.
She proceeded to that area.
Yes. Now, to be clear, when you spoke to the chairman, did it appear to you that the chairman was also concerned about what had happened?
Yes, she appeared very concerned. Surprised and shocked.
And was access to that upper floor also blocked by police?
Yes.
Sometime later, did you see the now Attorney General, Mr. Nana?
Yes, I did.
And
Mr. Gunraj, would you say in hindsight that whatever it is by way of declaration that the RO made on the elevated platform was contrary to the position taken by the Commission?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
so was Mr. Nanlal at that time accompanied by anyone?
Yes,
Can you tell
I
us?
saw Mr. Nandlal entering the building
Mhm.
in the company of one or two other attorneys at law, and more importantly, two marshals of the Supreme Court dressed in uniform.
And did he speak to you?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
He communicated to me that he had obtained an order of a judge of the High Court, which order needed to be served on the chairman of GCOM, Justice Singh, on the returning officer, and on the chief elections officer.
Sure. And were the marshals able to go up to the area where you had seen the returning officer go and where you had also seen the chairman go?
I accompanied the two marshals of the Supreme Court to the foot of the staircase leading to the third floor, which continued to be guarded by a heavy police presence. I indicated to them that it was necessary to let the marshals through to access the persons who were named in the order to serve the documents on them.
Did they allow those persons up?
After a very intense and elongated conversation and discussion, they eventually let the marshals through, and I accompanied those marshals to the third floor.
Did any of those ranks say why they were preventing marshals of the court from going up to the third floor? Did they give you all any reason at all?
Except to say that they had instructions so to do. That was all that they said.
Did they say who had issued those instructions?
No, they did not.
Did you ask them?
At that point, no.
So the marshals were eventually allowed to go up.
Yes,
And when they went up, did you accompany them?
I did accompany them.
So tell us briefly what happened when you went up to the next floor.
When we proceeded to the third floor, we encountered a series of locked doors. In the company of the marshals, we rapped on every door that there was. And on every door that had a lock, a lever to open that door, we checked to see whether it was open. They were all locked.
Well, did every door have a lever?
No, all the doors did not have levers.
Okay. So, not being able to get into any of the rooms on the third floor, what did you then do?
We sat, and interestingly, we sat on the floor because there was no seating for a considerable period, periodically rapping on those doors again, repeating the process on several occasions, rapping, trying to open the doors, just in the event that something changed.
Were you calling out?
We were calling, in fact, when I was rapping on the doors, I was rapping and calling Mingo, 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 as I headed on the doors.
Was the chairman's office on the third floor?
No, sir.
But you saw the chairman go to the third floor.
Yes, sir.
Did you see her come back down?
At the time that I was up there, between the time I was up there and when I saw her go up, no, I did not.
Yes.
So you're knocking and calling for Mingo.
Mingo. There was no answer. The doors remained locked, and there was no answer.
I have a question which is perhaps out of sequence, for which I apologize. Mr. Gunraj, you said earlier that in your last exchange with the chair, when you asked, would you see what's happening, she said she was going to find out from Mingo, from Mr. Mingo, presumably on the third floor.
Correct.
At any point did she ever report back to you or any of the commissioners as to whether she in fact had a discussion with Mr. Mingo on what, if anything, transpired?
Up to the present time, no, sir.
Thank you. So did you return to the second floor at some point?
After a considerable period of time, I returned to the second floor.
While you were up on the third floor, were you calling the CEO?
On his telephone?
Yes.
Yes, I was.
Were you calling the chairman?
I was, and there was no answer to either. I also called the Deputy Chief Elections Officer, Roxanne Myers, and there was no answer from her as well.
And her office was on the second floor. Did you go to her office?
Her office was also on the third floor.
Oh, I see. Okay. At that point, do you know whether the CEO had returned to the building?
I did not see him return.
Did you at some point thereafter see the chairman on the third floor?
Yes, I did.
And when you saw the chairman, were the court marshals still there?
The court marshals had already left because this was pretty late in the evening, and the court marshals had already left the Ashman's building.
And in what circumstances was the chairman being, well, in what circumstances was she being taken out of the building?
I saw the chairman accompanied by several police ranks, and both uniformed and ununiformed, and she was escorted from the third floor down to the ground floor to her vehicle.
When you saw her, were you able to have a conversation with her at all?
I was not. I was prevented from going even close to her by the said police ranks.
After that, did you go to the ground floor of Ashman's building?
I did.
And is it correct to say that when you went to the ground floor, you saw at least one staff member?
Yes, there was in the tabulation room, the RO's office, there was at least one person who was present there, who I recognized to be a member of staff of GCOM, who was previously working with Mr. Mingo.
And you saw some party agents there,
Yes, I did.
and you saw, well, at some point you saw the DCO and the chief accountant.
So, yes.
Now, when you saw the DCO, did you have a conversation with her about all of this that had transpired?
No, I did not.
Can you tell us why?
When I saw the CEO, the DCO, Roxanne Myers, and Joseph Eastman, the chief accountant, the first time I saw them, they were coming down the non-functioning escalators and approaching the tabulation room in which I was at that time. There was also There were several police ranks there, including then Assistant Commissioner of Police Edgar Thomas. And I heard her saying to Mr. Thomas that the building needed to be cleared. Before I could have approached Roxanne Myers to discuss any of those issues that you asked about, she repeated that instruction to Mr. Thomas.
And after she gave that instruction to Mr. Thomas, what occurred?
It was at that point that I stated the need to have the electoral material that was currently lying in that tabulation room, that office of the returning officer, to be properly secured and stored. And I needed to be satisfied as to the safety and sanctity and integrity of that, those documents before I could entertain any request to leave the building.
What did the DCEO say?
She bluntly refused to entertain any discussion in that regard.
No, but did she say anything? When you said
She said that that was GCOM's material and they will take care of it.
Okay.
What did Officer Thomas say, Assistant Commissioner Thomas? Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry.
I have this habit of taking you back. I'm going to do it one more time. The chairperson said to you, I'm going up to the third floor to inquire what transpired. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So you were left there. You couldn't follow because the police prevented you.
Yes, sir.
Marshals arrived with an order to be served.
Correct.
You were able, after some representation, to get past the police and to go up to the third floor.
Yes, sir.
That is the floor you last understood the chairperson was there in some room.
Yes, sir.
You knocked and called and you waited to no avail. You couldn't find the chairperson.
Yes, sir.
And you had no access to the chairperson. Sometime after, you saw the chairperson leaving.
Several hours later, sir.
Several hours later.
Yes.
So when in paragraph 38 of your statement you say sometime thereafter, it was really several hours after.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you see from where she emerged? Was it the third floor, second floor, where?
She emerged from the third floor, sir.
Maybe he should look at
Mark,
refresh the reference to the it might be a little like the application.
Paragraph 38, so could you have a look at it?
Is that? But this seems to. So, paragraph 38 really would be the occasion on which the chairperson went to the third floor.
No, chair.
When you said here, I saw the chairperson appear onto the third floor.
The styling of it.
What is it? What are
She
you
appeared
saying?
on or she appeared to go onto?
So is it that there is some sort of typographical error
that's
there?
what
I'm trying to figure out which word has to go.
Not
I
important.
saw her on the 3rd floor.
On the 3rd floor?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So can we safely say the 2 should be deleted?
Sometime thereafter, I saw the chairman on the 3rd floor.
Right,
But by this time, the marshals had left.
Left, okay.
Yes.
fine.
On the 3rd floor.
yes.
Okay.
And I was asking you about your discussion with Assistant Commissioner Thomas, because you said you had been concerned about the security of the election documents and so on. Very briefly, what was the nature of your discussion with Assistant Commissioner Thomas?
I was pointing out to Assistant Commissioner Thomas the importance of the documents that were in that room, and we were exploring possibilities of actually securing the room.
And while you were having that discussion, did you see any member of the Tactical Services Unit?
I did. I saw, I don't recall his rank, but I am positive that his rank was lower than that of Assistant Commissioner, which was the rank held by Mr. Thomas, came into the building dressed in uniform and told Mr. Thomas in a very harsh tone, "You have to clear the building."
And what was,
That Thomas had to clear the building.
He said, "You have to clear the building. We have instructions to clear the building." And then
Yeah, then.
Mr. Thomas said to him, very briefly, what we were doing. What I was pointing out to him,
Yeah.
that is to say, Commissioner Gunraj is talking about the importance of these documents. I'm engaging with him on that issue. And the name of the rank was Davis. I don't know if I said that. And then he left. Davis turned and left.
when
So,
that,
sorry.
sorry,
I'm trying to get this. This rank Davis, was he junior in rank to Mr. Thomas? Or
Yes, he was, sir.
but giving Thomas instructions?
In a very rude tone, yes, sir.
A superior officer?
Yes, sir.
And you were present, you heard that?
In my presence.
Yeah.
did you then try to call Deputy Commissioner of Police Maxine Graham?
I did.
Were you successful?
There was no answer.
And do you know whether Assistant Commissioner Thomas sought to call Ms. Graham?
I know he did, and he did so in my presence.
And was it your understanding that her instruction was that the building had to be cleared?
Yes, it was.
Now you spoke of seeing an officer from the TSU who had come and spoken rudely to Assistant Commissioner Thomas. Did you see him again?
He re-entered the building, he returned a few minutes later and repeated the very instruction.
Was he then accompanied by anyone?
At that point, he was accompanied by one other rank.
Do you know who was the, did you know or did you find out who was that officer?
At that point, I don't know who it was.
Up to now, you don't. Up to today. You cannot say who that
Subsequent to that date, I learned of the name, but I don't recall who the name of the person is now.
Yes. So did that officer, well, the officer who had returned, who had come in earlier and who was now returning, did he speak to Assistant Commissioner Thomas?
He did. He repeated the instructions and that he previously gave, and I am saying instructions now because he was instructing that the building had to be cleared, and it was far more aggressive on the second occasion than it was on the first occasion.
Did Assistant Commissioner Thomas speak to you?
He did.
What did he say to you?
He said to me, Commissioner Godraj, I can no longer guarantee your safety in this building. We should leave.
And did you leave?
We left.
And was this at about 5 to 9 that night?
It was.
We left, meaning both you and
Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner Thomas
Thomas
escorted me
out of
out of the building.
As you were leaving, did you make any observations?
I did. As I was leaving, a mere few feet away, there was a heavily armed contingent of ranks from the Tactical Services Unit, dressed in riot gear, approaching the entrance of the building from which we were leaving.
And when you left the building, about how many people remained inside, to the best of your information, your knowledge or observation?
Probably 5 or 6 people maximum. That 5 or 6 persons who I described earlier on, party agents, I think 2 or 3 party agents. That 6 people excluded the 2 GCOM officials, Myers and Eastman.
Okay.
Can I? You were expressing concern about the security of the important GCOM material, particularly statements of hope.
Yes, sir.
But the position of the Deputy Chief Elections Officer was that she wanted you out of the building.
Yes, sir.
She actually said that to you.
Yes, sir.
You must leave the building.
Yes, sir.
And what was your response to her?
I reminded her, and part of the insistence on remaining there was that I was a commissioner of the Guyana Elections Commission, clothed with constitutional responsibility and with constitutional coverage, which entitled me to be there. Of course, that was ignored.
Ignored.
Yes, sir.
I'm troubled by that. Anyway.
So I'm going to rush you forward. Well, I take it by the end of the day of the 5th of March, you realize that a declaration of some sort had been made by the returning officer for District 4.
Yes.
So on the 6th of March at around 8:30, did you return to Ashman's building?
I did.
And did you return because, as an attorney at law, you knew that there were likely to be requests for recounts?
Yes, ma'am.
So, when you returned there, can you tell me what you observed about the building?
Before I was even allowed to approach the building, the barricades that I referred to earlier on, with that 1 block perimeter, were still in place. There was a very heavy police presence, and it took the very same it took the very same convincing of ranks at manning those barricades to be allowed in.
During the course of, sorry, is it a convenient
well,
point?
As soon as you reach up, maybe you could just compete.
Yes, I was just going to ask.
Yes.
During the course of the night of the 5th into the 6th, the morning of the 6th, did the CEO contact you at all?
No, he did not.
I think this is a convenient
Yes.
stage for us to take the luncheon break. We will resume today at 1:30 p.m.